What was your "oh duck I'm gonna die" moment? For some reason I was separated from the group I was traveling with in Mexico, and the cab driver started going in the exact opposite direction of where I told him to go. I was pretty confident of my Spanish language skills at that time, so I repeated the directions again, and he kept going, giving some flimsy, not quite coherent explanation for going the wrong way. At this point, I was terrified, but I got this paradoxical reaction, where I sat forward, and very loudly in English told him to turn the f***ing cab around and go the other way. He did not say another word, just turned the cab around and went exactly where I told him to. May have just saved yourself some money or a kidnapping. It was the 90s, before cell phones, and I was about 21. Also, I'm female and had been drinking just a little at the time. Still had my wits about me though, which is why I must have felt confident enough to take a cab by myself. But also at that age, sometimes the invincibility stupidity of youth kicks in. You are right. Of course. It might have been just to go the long way and then overcharge the tourist scam. They do that bit in New Orleans all the time, used to live there. But being in a young woman in foreign country just set my alarm bells off. I traveled to New Orleans circa 1995 for business. We stayed at the hotel connected to the Superdome. The first night we hailed a cab to go to one of the restaurants in the French Quarter. It was about a 10-15 minute ride and cost maybe $10-15 bucks. When we got done with dinner we went out front and asked the hostess to call us a cab to the hotel. She said, "Are you sure?" and pointed to our hotel 2 blocks away. We just chuckled and figured we deserved that. LOL. Walking home from school carrying an art portfolio case, basically a 5 foot by 4 foot by 1 inch briefcase. In other words, a handheld sail. Strong wind gusts. Crossing a busy highway on an overpass. A very strong gust hit me straight from the side, and the portfolio caught it like a damn galleon sail. I felt myself nearly lifted off the sidewalk for a split second, and I was pushed a couple steps towards the safety rail. I was not airborne or anything, but I would have tumbled over it if I were just a bit less lucky. In my freshman year of college I almost got blown into traffic by a serious gust of wind. I was scrawny at the time and the sidewalk was totally coated in ice. I legit had to cling to a lamppost and wait for it to pass. It was hilarious afterwards, but scary at the time because people in that city drove like a-holes. I cannot breathe through my nose due to a birth defect. I had surgery and it was at a teaching hospital. The doctor messed up and tried to run tubes up my nose, causing everything to swell and cutting off what little breathing I can do through my nose. Then they ran the tube down my throat. When all was done my jaw was wired shut. My throat swelled. I woke up trying to breathe and not being able to get much breath. I panicked and passed out. I remember thinking, this is how I die. I woke up to my main doctor unwitting my jaw and cussing out the trainee doctor. "Are you a ducking bajillionaire now?" I would be suing the ever living shit out of them. I'm guessing not, because you can typically only collect damages if you can prove harm. I doubt you would get much, if anything, for the mental anguish of nearly dying. When my sister's friend pushed me off a dock into a deep spot, I was too stunned to realize what happened. Started drowning. I'm still not sure what happened after I started sucking down water, flailing. Do not remember anything after that point, or even the moment my sister pushed me in front of an oncoming car for stepping on the back of her shoes repeatedly. Had a split second moment where I thought that I might, as I was plummeting into the road off the side walk, then saw the car mere centimeters from my face as it screeched to a halt. It sounds like your sister's nuts and hangs out with some other nut jobs. Indeed. I work on TV broadcast towers, including some of the tallest structures ever built. I don't even count the hundreds of little things that make your butthole pucker when you read 2000 up on a tower. The time I actually came closest to dying was several years ago while working alone in a remote area, performing a plumb tension on a cell tower. This requires walking to all the anchor points, measuring the tension of the guide wires, adjusting the wire tensions to the specified ranges while ensuring the tower structure remains plumb the vertical equivalent of level by viewing it through a transit. It was July or August 2018 in the US Southeast, so fairly hot and extremely humid outside. Not wearing a shirt, I could see my heart pounding pretty hard in my chest and knew I should rest, but I was making good time on the project and decided to press on and go finish the farthest anchor from the tower before resting. A few minutes later I smashed my finger in the tension measuring device, and despite having a high pain tolerance it definitely needed some attention. While walking back to the truck I realized I was in trouble. Way too hot, and several hundred yards uphill to go. My hearing faded out, and my vision started tunneling in, like it does when you're about to pass out. Had a very clear understanding of what was happening to me. I was having a heat injury, and if I passed out before I made it to the truck I could die there. It wasn't a panic, but a calm understanding that pay toja thigh. Your body is shutting down, and you may die here today. Thankfully I managed to reach the truck, blast the air conditioning, and recover. Was a crazy week thinking back on it. 2 or 3 days later my boss sent me to do another job at the CIA headquarters in Langley without sending the CIA my info, so when I showed up at the gate they were not expecting me, and of course wouldn't let me in until everything was in order. Passing out with an injury is super scary. I about cut my finger off field dressing a deer and needed to get to the hospital. I could feel myself starting to drift out of consciousness on my way to my vehicle. I don't know from blood loss or from shock. I made it to the machine shop my vehicle was at and just remembering dropping to my knees and my cheek hitting the cold concrete floor. Someone found me and drove me to the hospital. I do not know how long I was out for, but when I woke up it felt like I had just taken the best nap of my life. When I almost choked to death after inhaling too many meatballs without chewing enough. Ike almost claims another victim. Then you reincarnate as an Ike employee in the infinite Ike in that SCP. When my daughter was born, I had a cesarean and lost too much blood. I got cold and really tired, and the people around me suddenly got busy and kept saying stay awake, stay awake. I heard my daughter cry and they held her up, and I thought, since she has been born safe, and while it was okay for me to let go, I wasn't frightened. Just so tired. Had something similar happen. My blood pressure dropped dramatically while in labor, and I felt like I was miles away from the people sitting by my side. I knew it was strange, but I was just calm. I commented to my husband that he was getting pretty far away from me. He took one look at me and ran for the nurse. The monitor was turned down by my doula. Thankfully I was given a shot to normalize my blood pressure and quickly returned to normal. WTF doula. I hope they got in trouble for that. That sounds so scary. I had hired her, not the hospital. After labor and delivery, I had time to process the experience and think about what could have happened. I wish I had the energy to sit down with her and discuss, but I had a newborn, or 3-year-old and PPD. I did not have her do any of the postpartum services that were in our contract. I just ignored her follow-ups. Not the greatest response, but the best I could manage then. Near stroke last year. I'm 16 by the way, so that's a new scar. I'm glad it was only a near stroke. What is a near stroke? The heart beats at a rapid pace. Mine was 350 BPM. If it would have continued, I would have had a stroke. But I was hit with a defibrillator before that happened. Intense. That's good news they zapped you, and you are okay. What was it like your heart going so fast? Do you remember being defibbed? Also what was the cause of the spike in your heart rate? I hope you do not mind me asking you these questions. Feel free to tell me to go munch eggs if you do not want to answer them. Was surfing on a day I should not have gone out and got pummeled by some heavy waves. Became disoriented underwater and could not tell which way was up. Getting dragged by my board when I felt like I was starting to black out and felt like I was pretty close to reflexively gasping for air, which would have been bad to do underwater. I do not even remember how I reached the surface, and I do not really even remember taking a big dramatic breath like you would see in a movie. I just remember my vision and hearing coming back while I was laying on my board, and then looking around for the next set of waves to see if I could reach the shore. Fortunately I had been pulled closer in by the prior wave S and was able to lay on my board and get back safely. Alternatively, on a bike ride going down a mountain and took a turn with too much speed, I locked my rear brake and did what probably looked like a bicycle version of a hockey stop to avoid riding off the cliff. That would have been pretty bad. Alternatively, had an asthma attack when I was much younger that put me in the air and, similar to the surfing incident, was starting to black out because I could not breathe and was told I was about to be intubated. Luckily I responded to the meds they gave injected. Glad you got through all of your near-death experiences. Also love the name. He has a threat level to himself by the sounds of it. Nowadays I'm more likely to burn my foot on a Foreman grill trying to wake up to some delicious crispy bacon than anything else. Took a puddle jumper from the San Juan Islands in Washington back to SeaTac. I have a deathly fear of flying, but my in-laws thought it'd be better than taking the ferry back. There were only 8 seats or so, and I had to sit next to the pilot. As soon as we were off the ground, I knew something was wrong. He kept adjusting his headset and flipping switches and buttons frantically. He broke into a sweat. I was already panicking, but he didn't say anything. The resort of my family was having a merry old time in the back. When I saw the airport looming in the distance, I realized that we were right behind a ginormous jet. It probably wasn't huge, but to me, it looked roughly the size of a superstar destroyer. When we banked, I looked back and saw another big jet. Then I realized why the pilot was freaking out. He didn't appear to have any radio contact. I have no ducking idea what pilots do in that situation, but whatever it was, I didn't like it. When we landed, the pilot took off his headset and just said, "Woo." He was drenched in sweat. The rest of my family had no idea there was anything wrong. Answer Squawk 7600. Use cell phone to contact ATC. Kick back and enjoy a radio-free flight. If it is true all that was wrong was a shot radio, I think your pilot may have just been a sweaty dude. A busted radio should be a relatively minor disturbance for any pilot by the time they are flying commercial. I could tell you about some real "oh duck, I'm gonna die" time. This was in 1996. I don't think any of us had cell phones. Then you just got a visual beacon instead. Super minor stuff. Had 2 buddies get stuck in a riptide on a very remote black sand beach on the north part of Big Island, Hawaii. One of their girlfriends realized they couldn't get back in because one cramped up too badly and ran to get me for help. It was the perfect storm for a few reasons. I was the only guy on the beach besides an grandfather and his 2 grandchildren. It was about 5 miles down a cliff with no cell reception, and there was only one house on top the cliff. I ran to the water, and when I got to chest level, the water was pulling so hard. The only thought in my mind was I am not getting out of this. If I go in with a foot-long floating thing we found on the beach. I tell my one friend to get in if he can, and he does. We either drift along the cliff line, where there is no beach for miles, or we drift out to open ocean. So I am out there with a guy who is 5'8", 230 pounds. I am 5'7" at 170, who just had shoulder reconstruction surgery 7 months prior, and he is freaking out, swallowing water from 8-9 foot waves, and yelling me to leave him. I remember in the moment when we was yelling at me to leave him because he didn't want 2 of us to die, and to just let him, all I could think was lie and make him think this is possible, which I didn't even truly believe. So after him losing grip 3 separate times in the flotation device, I'm finally able to get us to shore. Ironically, after being in the current for 50 minutes, a rescue helicopter got there 5 minutes after we got out because one of the guy's grandkid ran to the top of the cliff to get a call out. The shittiest part was I was going to propose to my girlfriend on that beach that afternoon, but she instead watched me almost drown trying to get our friend out. It still gets me worked up recalling it, because seeing a grown man beg you to let him die so you can live is something you never forget. This story is confusing, mate. You jumped in with the floating device to save your friend, or had him come with you to save a third friend? Both friends were in the ocean. One friend, the bigger one, cramped up while trying to get back in, so the other friend stayed with him trying to get him out until I came in after them. So the 2 were out there for about 10 minutes till I swam out and pretty much provided relief for one. So, what happened to the other friend, lol? Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.